GP arguing in favour of the budget. Well, the Finance Minister Mathias Cormann is one of the chief salespeople for a budget he helped put together. He joins me now. Mathias Cormann, welcome to Capitol Hill.
Good to be here.
Is life easier in opposition than it is in government?
Well, life in government is all about making sure that we build a better opportunity and for the future, that we strengthen our country for the future. And it is obviously a great privilege to be taking responsibility to ensure that we can address the challenges we've inherited and put ourselves on the best possible foundation for the future.
Do you think, though, that the sales pitch for this budget was begun too late, that right after the election was won, you didn't begin early enough telling people that tough action would be required, so they weren't expecting what they saw in the budget?
Well, we've been telling people for a very long time, indeed, all throughout the last term of the Parliament, that Labour spending was unsustainable, that the Labour legacy of debt and deficits was damaging our economic prospects for the future. And of course, in the lead up to the last election, we identified $42 billion worth of savings that we took to the last election.
But you also promised no surprises, and it is true that people have been quite surprised by the scale of the cuts in this budget.
Well, so what we did say before the last election is that we would repair the budget mess that we have inherited, and we also said that we would have a National Commission of Audit look right across government for opportunities to achieve efficiencies and ensure that government spending, taxpayer-funded government spending is as efficient and well targeted as possible. And of course, that's what we're doing. Now, we have inherited a spending trajectory that was unsustainable. So after Labor delivered $191 billion of deficits in their first 5 budgets, another $123 billion of projected deficits in their last budget, debt heading for $667 billion, a spending growth trajectory taking us to 26.5% of spending as a share of GDP. Completely unsustainable.
But while you made all those arguments saying that you didn't believe the budget figures, that there was a budget emergency before the election, you weren't telling people that their family payments would need to be cut, that pensions would eventually need to grow at a slower rate, that schools and education spending would need to grow at a slower rate, and people would have to spend extra money on top of the Medicare levy to visit a GP.
Well, we said very clearly that we would repair the budget mess that we've inherited, that we would put the budget back onto a believable path to surplus. And of course, the only way you can do that in a realistic fashion is by adjusting the spending growth trajectory to make sure it is a more realistic, a more affordable, a more sustainable spending growth trajectory into the future. And what we've done is to spread that as carefully and as equitably and as fairly as possible across all of the government spending programs.
Do you accept that you will need to compromise on some measures in order to get them through the Senate?
Well, we've presented the budget that Australia needs if we want to protect our living standards and if we want to build more opportunity and a stronger, more prosperous and more resilient economy for the future. And what we're putting to the Parliament and what we would expect the Parliament to adopt is the budget that in our judgment Australia needs right now.
But you're not in a majority in the Senate. You will have to compromise on some measures, won't you?
Well, you're making assumptions there because, I mean, 2 weeks ago...
Assumptions based on most of the last 30 years of Senate history where governments have had to compromise to get things through.
Except that 2 weeks ago, I mean, we've got a leader of the opposition in Bill Shorten that just continues to flip and flop and chop and change. 2 weeks ago he said that he wasn't prepared to entertain a temporary budget repair levy to address the budget mess they've left behind. And of course
he's
today,
compromised,
well, I don't think he's compromised. He's adopted our position because on reflection he realised that what we were proposing was appropriate and fair. And we will continue to make the case, and we will continue to calmly explain the judgments we've made, the reason for those judgments. We are hopeful and confident, in fact, that people across Australia over time will accept that what we're putting forward is what Australia needs after 6 years of Labor debt and deficit disasters. And we are hopeful that Labor eventually will take responsibility for the mess that they've left behind and decide to be part of the solution rather than just be the problem.
Will you be part of the negotiating team that tries to convince other senators that they need to pass this budget?
Look, we'll participate, obviously, as you'd expect us to do, through the parliamentary process as appropriate.
And you're prepared to talk to other senators, including the Greens?
We always talk to other senators, and the leader in the Senate is Senator Eric Abetz. I mean, he'll take the lead for us in the Senate, but obviously any of us with responsibility in various portfolios will be involved wherever we can help.
And just finally, have you modelled other figures for the GP co-payment, possibly a lower figure?
Well, at any time when you make judgments in relation to the best way forward, you assess various options and various potential ways forward, and the option that we've decided is the best option to ensure that our world-class health system remains sustainable and remains affordable into the future. The objective is to ensure that patients across Australia can continue to have affordable access to high-quality care, high-quality health care that is also affordable for the taxpayer.
But could you have a lower figure, and just that would just mean that the medical research fund the money goes into grows more slowly over time?
Well,
that doesn't affect the budget bottom line because the money's not going there.
Well, obviously the decisions that we've made do affect the sustainability of the health system, and they do affect the health of the balance sheet. I mean, obviously when you shift from recurrent spending and make these savings available for capital savings, that improves the balance sheet. If you ask people to make a contribution by way of a co-payment, which is a part fee for service, to help fund the services that are accessed, and obviously that also helps to improve the balance sheet by building up a capital base, which we invest in the Medical Research Future Fund.
So you're not willing to move on that at all?
Well, we are putting forward the budget that in our judgment, Australia needs right now, which includes the measure in relation to the co-payment as we have announced on budget night.
Mathias Cormann, thank you very much for your time.
Always good.